welcome to this edition of What Matters. And today I kick off the month of March with Mr. I.C. Bailey. So this month I've dedicated the show to men, and I'm calling it Men Matters. So what I'd like to hear is the voice of different males in our community. And if you've ever been a guest on my show, you know that I don't tell you what to say. I am actually interested in what matters to you. So today, I.C. Bailey is here. He joins us to speak about, our topic is broad, I would say. We're going to be speaking about how men are conditioned by patriarchy and through colonialism and white supremacy. So
big topics.
Those are big topics, and we only have an hour. But I'm going to let IC take over, but IC is a Facebook friend of mine, and that's where we initially met. We met on
Facebook.
Facebook.
We're just Facebook friends? We're not like real life
No,
friends?
we are. That's how we found each other. But now we're real life friends. And that's one of the reasons I love social media, because it puts you in connection with some amazing people. So he's going to tell you about himself, but I'll tell you a little bit. And one of the things that IC does that's quite amazing is he's the founder of a group called Conversations with White People. Now, the name alone, I know, will get a lot of people, eyes will open, hairs will bristle, and you'll wonder what it's about. But it's actually a community of people that are trying to increase understanding, correct?
Absolutely.
So it's a very positive environment. If you're thin-skinned, it's not for you. You've got to go in with some layers of clothing and hear what needs to be said so that honest conversations can be had. So before I go off on a tangent, I'm going to let IC introduce himself and tell us, where are you coming from, what's your background, where are you going to, and what matters to you?
Wow. Well, thank you for having me on the show, Erica.
Thank you for accepting.
Wonderful. Coming into the studio and seeing, the work that the group's done here is just fabulous. It's really good just to see people empowering other people and allowing other people to have voices, because they have power. So, and I guess that's really where my journey began, is I felt, as a child of the ward or the court, growing up here in Canada, I was removed from my mother at a young age and removed entirely from the black community to a community of not my choosing. I went through a lot of abuse, racial, mental, emotional, sexual abuse as a child. And my voice was taken from me. And as a result of my voice being taken from me, I started to wonder what it would sound like to myself and to others. And so I started finding others just in our community. I was robbed of sort of the history of who we are as a people. And I started reading about Malcolm X and Rosa Parks and Sojourner Truth and Maya Angelou and Shirley Chisholm. And so I learned that I'm from a rich, powerful history of amazing people. And so what I started doing is I started saying, okay, I want to get my voice out there. It's like the only way I could live is by actually sharing my thoughts with others. Then I found that others felt the same way. And in conversations with white people and the 9 other groups, conversations with black people, with women, with men, with the LGBTQIA community, about mental health, about sex and relationships, and conversations with indigenous people, I learned that other people, too, wanted their voice to be heard, because our voices have power.
Absolutely. I agree tremendously with that. And that's one of the reasons I feel so blessed to have this platform, because I realize that my purpose is to help. And one of the ways that I help is I facilitate people by bringing them here and letting them have their say. So I really thank you for joining us. So that's a lot. That's a lot of different groups to found. And I know you put out tremendous amount of work. And it couldn't have been easy, because you didn't pick easy topics. You didn't, for somebody finding their voice, you didn't go in easy just speaking about what you know, but inquiring on others' perspectives. And I find it amazing, as somebody at a very young age that had their voice taken away, that what you chose to do was empower others to speak. And I think that that's a real testament to your character and who you are. And so so you said there's 9 different groups?
There's 9 different groups altogether. And if you go to conversations with white people, you'll very quickly find out all those other 9 groups, but I can't take credit for all of them because they're really as a result of some amazing moderators and contributors who just are committed day in, 24/7, 365 days a year. When the marches are done, when the events are done, there's still us, always there to ask questions. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's primarily Black women who are in a place of leadership there. You know, Fatima and Melissa, Monique, Annalisa, Talisha, there's Brandy, Brittany.
Shout-outs.
Yeah, all shout outs because this work would be impossible because they manage 90% of the work, 99% of the work, you know, as well as other people in other communities, indigenous communities doing the work.
So when I asked you here, and it was a very interesting conversation. I've been trying to connect with IC to have him on from before, but then when I said I was doing dedicating March to men and asked him to be on, and he said, well, you don't think men say enough? And I found it very interesting coming from a male that his first thought was, they speak enough. They have enough platforms. I don't understand why you're dedicating yours to men. They have all the platforms. Mm. But part of the reason why I want to do this is to increase my understanding. Right. And in order to understand people, you have to listen to them. Now, I can never experience life as a male, so I can only listen to men tell me their perspectives and their feelings and their experiences and grow to understand that way. But I did find it very interesting. That was your first response is, don't you think they have enough platforms? Like, why are you, there's enough. So IC has some very strong opinions about many things, and we're going to hear about some of them today. So one of the things that matters to you is the connection between how men are and the institutions that influence them. And the three of them that you'll be addressing today are
white supremacy, colonialism, and patriarchy. And so when you look at men's lives, they're complex. They're complex because there's a lot of stuff that we have to unpack. And sort of the state that men find ourselves in and the state that we have thrust upon the world, women, children, the environment, everything, is a result of these systems. And so what we see an overarching umbrella, and I'd like to say it's benevolent, it's not. It's benevolent, scourge that's over the whole entire planet, which is this idea of colonialism. Right? And with colonialism, what we have is one group of people wanting to have power and control over another group of people and have invaded, come in and taken over their lives. They've kidnapped them, they've taken their land, they've subjected them to the worst oppression and abuses that you could ever imagine. So that's colonialism. But in order to keep these things going, they've created systems. And that's where we talk about white supremacy, where one group of people creates a construct, hi, you're white, you're black, and we're going to use that to control you and control others, and so that we can keep power. That's white supremacy. And then racism is all the tools and the system that they use to keep that in place.
Well, thank you for that. That was one of the things I was going to do. I'm a very big lover of words, and I think that words truly matter, and definitions matter. Now, words are fluid. They do change over the time. Michael Jackson sang, I'm bad, and if you had no context, you would think, well, why would this man make a song about being the worst? But words do change meaning. But thank you for that, because I was going to, and I will, read definition. And I took a very basic, simple definition. Colonialism, a policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers, and exploiting it economically. And then white supremacy. And please listen to this, because a lot of people, again, they get all bristly and all they picture pointy hats and burning crosses. But the most simplistic definition of white supremacy is the belief that white people are superior to those of all other races, especially the black race, and should therefore dominate society. So now 2 weeks ago, I did have on a guest, Debbie Irving, and she wrote a book called Waking Up White. And she explained, because white supremacy, obviously, it's a belief system. And it's not just a belief system held by blacks or by it's their belief system. And whether it is intentional or unintentional, you're just born into it. And just as with children, black children not being represented, you don't see dolls of yourself, you don't see yourself in the movies. So even though no one said anything negative, you come to a conclusion. Right. And it works in the reverse as well. So even if a white person's parents aren't overtly racist, by everything that you see in society, you see yourself represented in all the best lights. You have the availability of things. Right. It only can kind of, by default, lead to the belief that, well, I'm obviously better. And it may not ever be a thought, a full sentence that's you say in your head, but through everything that you do throughout your life, you reinforce that belief. So first 10 minutes is up. We will be back after this break, and we're going to dive right into the effects this has had on men and the way that they treat women. And I see some strong words about that too. We'll be right back after this break.
Hello, my name is Anisha, and I'm the production manager of TCN Network. Have you ever wanted to host your own show? Do you have a message to share? Well, you're in luck. We are looking for dynamic and unique individuals to host their own shows. We are seeking people who are committed, motivated, and energetic. Do you want to be the next Jimmy Fallon, Ellen DeGeneres, or Shane and Ryan from BuzzFeed Unsolved? Start here. Fill out the Propose a Show form on mytcntv.com. We're here to educate, support, and build the community. Can you lead by example? Go the extra mile and seek knowledge? Are you humble, disciplined, responsible, selfless, and enthusiastic? Those are our core values. And if you identify with them, you could be part of a growing network that focuses on positivity and uplifting our community. We can't wait for you to join us on TCN Network and hope to hear from you soon.
Welcome back to this edition of What Matters, and this March we are celebrating the voices of men in our community. And today I'm here with I.C. Bailey, the founder of many things, the voice of many people. Like most of my guests, if I list everything off, that will be the show. So today we're talking about how colonialism, white supremacy, patriarchy, I keep mispronouncing that, say it?
Patriarchy.
Patriarchy.
Patriarchy, yeah.
Patriarchy. How they influence the development of men, and then how that now seeps through our whole society, because obviously it affects men, it affects women, it affects how we grow our children, our views of things, and so on. Right. So we wanted to start off with, and Anisha, if you could bring it up for us. So here is actually you explain.
Yeah, and this is sort of a schema that gives us an understanding of how this stuff fits together, because it's not simple, it's complex. How does colonialization relate to supremacism, and how does that relate to white supremacism, and what are some of the things that happen in white supremacy, actual activities? And you can see them there: slavery, genocide, invisible labor, femicide, child abuse, ecocide, which is the destruction of our environments. Right? And it's really about total, complete control of things in order to gain privilege and benefit, right? And that gives us an understanding that it's a system. So if you can get anything out of this, is understand there's a complex system of things that are in place in order to control everything that it is that you see.
Okay. Now, I have a question for you. Looking at that chart, are all of the things that happen because of it very much on purpose, or are they just a by-factor?
Well, that's the thing about systems, is you set them up and they run on auto. They maintain themselves and they keep on going. So you say to a group of women, for example, we're going to pass a law and your husband's property is your own. Mm-hmm. You've set the law, you don't have to do anything for the next 50 years because you know all the wealth, all the property, everything of value is going to be held by women or by men, right? So you don't have to do anything. It just starts to propagate itself, right? So and that's the thing that makes systems dangerous because it's not just that they did something once and there was damage. There's this ongoing system of pain, suffering, and abuse and oppression, right? So when we look at some of the things that have happened, we see that they've been catastrophic for the lives of women. For children, we've seen that women don't have control of their own bodies because men do. They don't have control of their own environments, what they eat, where they sleep. Rape as a worldwide culture has been something that's been forced on the lives of women and girls and boys too. You know, and we look at the environment. The environment, you know, depending on who you believe, it's not a hoax. That the planet we live on is in danger of not being able to support us. And that's primarily because of the system of colonialism and patriarchy and white supremacy that focuses on we want something for us. We want benefit. And it's very, very short-sighted.
Do you think that, I know the answer to this, so let me rephrase this. What do you think the world would be like if it was women in the controlling power?
Well, it's interesting you say that because we've got, you know, our history as black people didn't begin with slavery. So there's matriarchal societies that in Africa that lived in complete harmony with their environment, right? That lived wisely, that respected people in the community, right? That were able to create great civilizations. And in fact, the reason why Europe came out of the Dark Ages when they were defecating in the water that they drink is because of Africa and the wisdom of some of the cultures there, that they're able to bring learning and understanding, to take them out of something literally known as the Dark Ages into a period of enlightenment. Yes. And that was black people primarily when we look at some of the leadership of black women, right?
Okay. And so you talk about, so you say this is caused men to behave poorly. Now, it's a system, as you said, and it's not, obviously, when you live in a colonialized country, and I think there are probably as many that you can name on maybe one hand that have not been colonialized, right? There's not that many countries in the world that have not been affected by this. You say this has caused men to behave poorly, but it works against women, but it also works against themselves.
Absolutely, and when we look at, you know, part of the colonialism, patriarchy, and all the things in capitalism, is that they're telling people how to behave. And so what we've done with men and women, we've set up this thing called gender roles. And if you go to one of the slides, you'll see we tell girls and boys and men and women that women, you've heard this, you're supposed to be a lady, Erica.
Act like a lady.
Right, and with men, we're supposed to be a man and be a big boy, don't cry, right? Mm-hmm. So we set these paradigms of behavior over our children's lives, right? And what happens is we don't allow them to be who they are, and as a result, they get damaged. So little boys don't get to cry. They don't get to access that internal emotion that's inside of them. They don't get to be able to this part of themselves. They don't get to feel who they are and express that openly, and it's damaging to them.
I think it's very damaging, but what you see, especially with and it's not just the older generation, obviously they exist, you know, within our generation too, but right. This fear that if your son expresses his emotions, that makes him effeminate, and, you know, many of the older generation too are worried that their sons will be homosexual, that as if crying at 4 is going to change your sexuality down the road. And I think what we're seeing in society now, because there's been a shift, that whole breadwinner, stay at home, that has changed. It's changed dramatically. And one of the things I've heard said is that men are, for want of a better word, and this is not my opinion, this is what I've heard, men are lost because they no longer know what their role is in the family and in society. But as you said, if we are trying to be ourselves and be valuable to the community and not just holding on to our gender roles, you know, a little girl who is she would be called bossy, not assertive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
and that quality will be downplayed. They'll tell you, little Susie, stop trying to tell everybody what to do. And if little Bobby likes to cook or likes to, you're going to give him a ball and tell him, go fight or go play or go tackle and try to neutralize that. And something I've always found really funny about that is that the top chefs in the world are almost all men.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's very interesting that when you reach a very high level of culinary skill, you're considered a chef, and most of them are men. Many of the top fashion designers in the world are men.
Right.
But I often wonder how they got there, because these qualities in a lot of cultures are so suppressed.
Right.
Coming from a Caribbean culture, everybody has to cook. That's you have that where men are brought up cooking. I have a lot of friends that told me I was boiling rice at 5. Like she better come home to a pot of hot, good, fluffy rice, right? But in other cultures, it's looked down at, and I've seen it where, and many men will say, almost proudly, well, I don't know how to cook, as if it's almost a badge of honor that you don't go in the kitchen and you don't do these things. And people talking about shifting the culture at holiday time, for example, Thanksgiving, where all the men sit around and they watch whatever game is on, the ball being thrown.
Gender roles.
And the women all going in the kitchen and cleaning up and preparing the next meal.
Right, and you make an amazing point from what you were saying about the LGBTQIA2+ community, is that as men, we start telling people, in order to control all their stuff, how they need to be, rather than having radical acceptance of whoever they are, whatever gender, whatever sexuality are. We just need to accept it in the Black community, in the white community, in every community. And so that plays down to even stuff like when we're eating at Thanksgiving. Thank who? But even when we're eating at holidays, and we put a lot of burden on the lives of people in order to do that. Like, wouldn't it be great if maybe women could just sit down and enjoy the holidays, and men take whatever roles, or men just wanting to cook and being whoever, having radical acceptance of who each person is. That's important.
Now, how do you think that can come about? Where do we start?
Well, I think part of it comes about is learning to be self-aware and be able to reflect. And that's not something that patriarchy has taught to the world, right? And as we talk between Black men, white women, and white and Black women, we see that there's no benefit for the oppressor to actually analyze and be critical about their own behavior. And they talk to that to us. So we don't self-reflect, right? We don't empathize because we can't, right? And that has damaging, because then we can't take care of ourselves either. We can't even empathize with our own condition,
our own feelings. So when I remember you had said that, where every time someone brings up any expression of sadness, you refer to it as a victim mentality.
Right. And we hear that all the time in the Black community. Don't be a victim. Well, we have been victimized. Let's deal with that. It was sad. It was horrible. I'm hurt. I miss my mom. I miss my dad. We were victimized, right? Trayvon Martin was shot. Does his mother does she have a victim mentality? Tamir Rice was an 11-year-old boy that was shot just because he was playing with guns like 11-year-old boys do, right? We have been victimized. A victim mentality was really people who were saying, because we have opposition to our oppression, them saying now, you're victimizing me, you're racist because you said I'm racist. And that's really what victim mentality is. Not us owning what's happened to us and then being able to talk like you and I are today.
Okay, so you actually, when we come back from the break, I just want to go back to that because my mind's still kind of wrapping around that. Okay. So we'll be back after this break, and we're going to go on to a bit about misogynic. Am I pronouncing that right? Misogynic?
Misogynistic.
Misogynistic. My pronunciation is off today.
I'm horrible with that system.
Misogynistic groups and how these have come about, right, and how this stems from patriarchy. We will be back after this break.
Cool.
Misogynistic.
Welcome to Shadow Auto. Are you retiring smart? Make your home's equity work for you. With your home's equity and our 30 years of experience, the Retire Smart Properties team can help you achieve the quality of life you've always wanted. Our services are 360 degrees. We'll give you advice, take care of staging and selling, and help you find the perfect home and community to transition to. It's time to enjoy the retirement lifestyle you deserve. Visit our website today to learn how you can use your home to retire comfortably. The Retire Smart Properties team, powered by RE/MAX West.
Welcome back to this edition of What Matters, and I'm here today with I.C. Bailey, and we are speaking about patriarchy. Patriarchy. Erica's going to get it right. White supremacy and colonialism, and how this has affected men, their views, their behavior, and how that has affected society in general. Sure. So during the break, we were talking a little bit about the extremes. The extremes, and when you look at the whole system, it is extreme, and because it's our baseline, we're used to it. As you said, in many places, even here where we live, women don't have the rights that they should to control the things that they should. In the United States and different states, you'll hear laws are made against abortion and so forth. Absolutely. And what's interesting is that the people making the laws are not women. And I always say that when an institution is going to implement something, you need to speak to the people who are using it. For example, in schools, a very recent example, in my son's school, they have all this new furniture, and when you speak to the actual teachers, they say, we don't like these, they don't work. But somebody far away in a building, that's completely removed from them, that's looking at a budget and looking at says, you know what, those are great tables, we'll use those, without speaking to the end user, which is the teacher. In hospitals, they'll buy new pumps. Someone far away in an office that just did some work on some paper. So these are great pumps, they're cost effective, and you have nurses completely frustrated because they're ineffective and they don't work. And it's the same thing with a lot of laws that apply to women, that apply to minorities, that apply to, and even that's a misnomer because in a lot of places the minorities are not the minority, they are the majority, but are still regarded as such. Right. And so the whole system stinks. It doesn't work, it's damaging, it's really not good. But then you have the extremes, like, as we were talking about during the break, the incels. Now, you give them a rundown of what it is. If you haven't heard about it, we'll explain it a little bit.
So part of this feedback that you're hearing about when women and other marginalized groups talk about, there's some language or behavior that's damaging to us, and we don't like it. And part of the feedback to that feedback is it's not okay to be white. It's political correctness is ruling everything. I don't have a right to my free speech. I can't get a date anymore because of the Me Too movement, things like that. And that's primarily from the group of people that are in control. You can see that in groups like the incel groups, which is involuntary celibates, right? These are people who feel that they've been oppressed because women won't date them because they're just trash. Because they're behaving in a way that they shouldn't. So what we're hearing is feedback to the feedback, and this is how systems evolve, is that some of the things that they did in the suffrage movement, right, excluded black women, but some of the things that black women did in their own liberation movements, and some of the things that we did in civil rights movements are now being counteracted by a new set of tactics, right? And that's what we're seeing here. So when we're looking at this, we have to know that we always have to be aware, we have to always be vigilant, we always have to be listening to other people's voices, right? If we care about them and we want to do things better for ourselves.
And it's in that listening. I think that's kind of like where you have, you had the Black Lives Matter, and that was, answered with all lives matter. And I think you might be missing the point. Yes, you're missing the point. Well,
blue lives matter.
Blue lives, exactly.
What's a blue life?
What is a blue life? Exactly. Right. You've chosen a job, and now you're almost trying to present yourself as a race.
Right. When you're an agent of the government that controls all the power and literally the keys to life and death. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
Literally.
And so what that does to men, Erica, is it makes us feel it's almost like a fix that whenever we have an interaction, whenever we have something that we're working towards, whenever we want to do anything, we have to have control. We have to have benefit. We have to have privilege. We have to have power. Right? We become like almost a petulant child. And when I look at the culture of men, I see us like Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court hearing, or even Michael Cohen, or number 45, because I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to get that taste in my mouth. Number 45. And what it's about is we don't get what we want. And if we don't get what we want, then there's an issue.
Then there's a tantrum thrown. And because it's disguised, or not disguised, because everyone's older and their weapons and so forth, but that's literally what happens. When I don't get what I want, I'm going to throw a tantrum. It's just on a worldwide scale.
Right.
I leveled cities, I ruined economies, and it's like watching children play in the sandbox, except the sandbox is the world.
Right, and the same people. And so what happens is someone like me, and I don't mind disclosing this, who was sexually abused for 10 years of his life as a child, I never felt like I could come out and say anything because, I'm supposed to be an athlete, I'm supposed to be tough, I'm supposed to be a man. I couldn't come out to anybody. And even sharing it with my brothers and sisters in the Black community, I've been told that, you have a victim mentality, even though I've set up massive networks, I've set up businesses. I have a book coming out, Conversations with White People, in the spring. That we have a website with an e-store. We've got lots of stuff like that going on. Even though I've done all that work, I'm still a victim. I'm still weak, right? And even in my own mind, Ian tells Ian sometimes, don't tell people about that. Right now, there's somebody, a little boy inside of me,
going, shh.
Don't tell everybody. Don't tell the entire world
Right.
that you were sexually assaulted as a little boy. Don't tell them because they're going to think you're weak.
They're going to think,
But I'm not. Right?
The strength that you show in all that you do, and that's the thing as well, is that when people use their voice and they speak about what's happened to them, you often hear them trying to be shut down. Well, it's the past. And I do believe that you need to acknowledge and process so you can move forward. Dwelling is not the key. Dwelling is what keeps you stuck. You don't want to dwell there, but it is a part of your experience, is a part of who you are, and it has to be expressed.
Absolutely. And by expressing it, like, we're complex beings. So I can talk about my abuse. I can talk about the thing, but then I can also listen to you and hear about how your son's day went. And I can also then go home and work on my media empire. Then I can also go out and volunteer. I'm a complex person. So I'm not just doing these one set of things. But what patriarchy teaches us through the image of Superman, Batman, is that there are these binary positions and that you must fall into this role. You're either this or that.
You're that. But you can't be a bit of everything. So you can't express yourself and show that. And, even saying show that soft side of you, it's not that it's a soft side. It is a part of you, but that's how we're taught to break it down and taught how to refer to it. And something with the Me Too, and I've seen a lot of great movements be hijacked and discredited almost, right? Where you had people coming forward and stating their truths, and then other people shutting them down, where it's like, well, it's all of you too. Actually, yeah, it actually is a tremendous portion of people. And I think a lot of people then, like with Black Lives Matter, turning it into All Lives Matter, Me Too, I've actually seen a hashtag Me Too too.
Which is think about this. Me Too doesn't necessarily talk about gender, it's just Me Too. So I can wear a t-shirt that says Me Too. What does that have to anything? So what it is, it's a response to the empowerment of women's voices. They're not listening to the issue. What they're doing is they're saying, you know what? Women just said some stuff. I'm owning part of it. I'm part of the group that's actually oppressing them. I don't like this. And they have this thing called cognitive dissonance where they just can't deal with the difference between the tension that their privilege or that their principles have caused them and their reality. And that's a problem. right? So I can say me too. I have a T-shirt that says me too because me too. How does that detract from women's voices by me just saying, yeah, you know, women have been sexually assaulted and I believe them.
Right? In support of that. So there's another thing that you had brought up and how it damages, oh boy, running out of time, how it damages the boys, especially in our community. And the other thing that we want to talk about is what is healthy behavior. Because, as I said before, you shouldn't just present a problem, but also to think about the solutions, right? What we can do to move forward, what we can do to make it better. And that expression of thoughts, feelings from a young age, regardless of gender, I think that's one of the very first steps.
Absolutely.
To that. I think that it starts, the impact is more on our sons. For many years, we've been speaking to our daughters about, like I said, instead of telling the little girl she's bossy, saying, wow, you have leadership skills.
Right.
Instead of saying to her, you know, well, maybe you should be a little bit more quiet, allowing her to have her voice because she has a big one. So that's something that, as a woman, I can say that I've seen happen even over my lifetime, where girls were more empowered. However, I feel that a lot of men feel that with that it's almost like a scale. If she has more, I have less.
Right. It's not pie, right?
It is, exactly.
Pie,
they're
right?
looking at it as a very finite, power is very finite. There's X amount of it, and if you give any to anyone else, then there is less for you. So when we come back from this break, we're going to wrap up. Icy's going to tell us how to find him, where to find him, and all those wonderful things. But we're also going to talk about what is healthy behavior and what does it look like? Because that's a really important question. I think that sometimes we can talk about things, but what does it look like when you're moving from that place of being oppressed by all these systems into a place of enlightenment, coming out of the dark ages? We'll be right back after this message. And we're right back. So, Anisha, can you put up the slide of the hockey player for us, please?
So here's a great example. You know, you had asked me a question during the break, you know, what do we do? And so I'm going to give you an active example. So here's this hockey player in the Quebec leagues. We were just talking about Quebec. And his name's Jonathan Diagby. And he took his family to watch him play one of his games. And you probably heard about this.
Yes,
you know, people were yelling racist slogans at him, but not just him, his girlfriend and his father, and telling him to go back to Africa. And he finally just was fed up. He said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, and he left.
He left, but he started crying because it's emotional. You're here playing a game that you love. It's supposed to be a positive event. Your family's there to see you, and they all get abused. So when we talk about solutions, one of the active solutions, let's say I'm Jonathan's friend. I'd say, Jonathan, I'm sorry this is happening to you. Let me listen to you. Cry, brother, cry on my shoulder. Let me know how you feel. Let others know how you feel. And we validate him. Mm-hmm. We validate him as a human being. We have radical acceptance of who he is and what he's going through right now, and we listen to his voice, right? We don't think about what we need in that moment. We think about Jonathan and his family, right? And what they must be. Can you imagine 20,000 people, 10,000 people screaming the N-word, screaming, go back to Africa, and you're the only black person? He's 24 years old. He's a young man. He needs our support, and we should love him and show him affection.
And just so that you know, this happened, it was just a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah, I think 5 or 6 days ago.
5 or 6 days ago. So, for anybody outside of Canada here watching, all my friends in the States that are watching, it is alive and well here too. Oh, very, very much alive and well. And when you look at a situation like that, there was another one. I wish I had the picture, Anisha. It was, I think they were playing baseball. I think it was baseball, right. And there was a video of one of them crying, a man crying on another man's shoulder, and the comments, the outrage, it was amazing. And then some people came back and said, "Oh, he just found out his mother died, and his best friend had been consoling him." And again, I was stunned by the comments. I was stunned by the comments, and he was crying, and I said, you know what? Even if it wasn't that his mother died, if you've ever played a sport and you know how much effort and energy and time goes into getting to those levels, and then to go and to play for a championship, and if you don't win, crying is not irrational. It is a very, very, like, you put your whole self into this activity. You gave it everything you had, and you did not win. And the outrage that people had of this man crying in public, and especially that he was crying on another man's shoulder. And this is the narrative that we need to change. This is the image that we need to change. And I think also, too, as I've explained to somebody, it's very much our society, because as you had said, there are many African groups that were patriarchy.
Patriarchal?
Patriarchal.
And the matriarchal. So patriarchal, matriarchal. Matriarchal, right.
And when I had the pleasure of going to Africa many years ago, and it was very interesting because my host went to see his brother. And I remember when he went to see his brother, they saw each other and they embraced, big hugs. And then as they were walking away, what I noticed is they were holding hands. And they were holding hands and walking to where they were going. And then when they sat down on the couch, they were sitting thigh to thigh. They were sitting right beside each other. Those things, those affections, even if you watched Black Panther, what you would notice is that there was a lot of emotion in the men. Our heroes, they cried. Right. They embraced their fathers. And these were some of the manliest warrior type men that you can imagine or fathom, but you saw the lead cry more than once.
Right, and you see him holding Chikala, holding Killmonger was his enemy, and he's holding him, cradling him as he leaves.
Exactly, right. And seeking the comfort of his father. Right. Even to go to another realm to hear his father's voice and to speak with him. So the affection, I think part of the reason we as a people have this disconnect is because it is not our nature. This is not our true nature. And I think that is one of the reasons why it doesn't make sense and it manifests itself so negative and
we're
angry.
And when we see, another man, showing emotion or hugging or crying or wearing a dress, we've got this gender role that's been thrust on us by the white mass power culture, and they're telling us how to be. And the reality is that even their own styles and fashions were forced upon them through other men, and it's just all confusing for us. And what we do is we start to emulate the power that we see, which is them. We start emulating. We become the black version of white people, right? And so for men, it's really damaging because then we're not able to connect with our boys. We're not able to connect with our women, our sisters. We're not able to connect with ourselves and be gentle and love ourselves. If you can't be gentle and love yourself and know who you are and be humble,
Yes.
then how do you ever in a million years be gentle towards other people?
Exactly. I brought up in the comment, I think it was on our post on Facebook, one gentleman said, well, bromances, the term bromance, is not something I see in our culture. And, he's the person who commented, he said, well, obviously, you'd be interested in forming friendships with other men because you're white. And I had to go in there, and if you didn't see it, I'll tag you. But I had to go in there, and I was just to clarify, what do you mean by that? And he's like, in my own community, I don't see this. So it wasn't an attack. It's just the way he said it, I wasn't sure, so I clarified. But he's saying he doesn't see that. And I said, that's unfortunate. You don't have that within your circle. But I see a lot of men that do have those lifelong friendships, and they refer to each other in times of need and confusion and trouble and maintain that connection. And those are some of the strongest men that I know that have that supportive, male community around them where they really can speak to one another. So in terms of what can we do, there's a new generation coming up. And obviously, as they say, everything starts with...
You're not saying I'm old.
No. We're okay.
But I'm part of the new generation.
Yes,
right?
You're part of the new generation. And that's the thing, is that we can all learn. We can all learn. And one of the things we need to learn about the most is ourselves.
Right.
I think self-reflection is one of the most powerful tools in this war, is looking at yourself and figuring out, why does this make me uncomfortable?
Right. And it's hard.
It's really hard. Listen, self-growth is so hard, you just want to throw in the towel all the time. It is, one, it's lifelong. If you start it, it's forever. And it's difficult. Dealing with your own trash is one of the hardest things you're ever going to do. It's really easy to deal with other people's. You can be critical. You can point out solutions. I can tell you why you're wrong and what's wrong with you. But when you have to turn that lens on yourself...
It's really hard. And sometimes you need help. Like, can I share something with you?
Yeah.
Actually, go see a therapist.
We should all see therapists.
Black woman, uniquely skilled and trained, really knows her craft. Doctor, I shouldn't say her name, but she's a wonderful person, and she helps me. She helps me, and she helps me in areas to be able to look at parts of myself that I didn't know existed. She's very great support, and as a result of that, I can go be all the things I need to be. I can go be Black Panther as a result of the supports in my life, right? Black Panther, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that there's a gentleman I follow, he's from the States, and he has this movement, and he feels we all need therapy. Everybody should go to therapy. You have groups of people who say, listen, I'm not even going to date you unless you're getting therapy. Straight up. We're not even dating. Another gentleman said, if I meet a woman and I'm serious about her, one of the gifts I will give her are 5 sessions. Here, babe, I paid for it. Go check yourself out. And I think that's amazing that people are starting to want to dig in, because especially in the Black community and the Caribbean community, mental health has been so taboo, so horribly taboo. And you watch people visibly suffering in front of you. The schizophrenic uncle that's just, crazy Uncle Charlie, don't worry what he... The man is obviously in need of help. So one of the things I'm really happy about is seeing that shift in that people being more open about it and more open with their difficulties and what they're experiencing, and talking to people and seeking out therapy and so forth. So I think that's one of the things that will really help us, not just as Black people, society in general. Right. So how do we break the chains of patriarchy?
Talk to each other, grow strong, economic base. Talk to our young boys, get involved in your community, go to therapy. But most of all, learn to be gentle with yourself, right? Learn to be gentle with yourself. Understand that these gender roles that have been thrust on you are damaging, right? Read, learn, get involved, get to know people, get outside of your comfort zone, challenge yourself, radical acceptance of who you are and who others are. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and we can't necessarily handle it all now, but those are some lead-ins to try to get things done.
Those were a lot of things. You just listed quite a bit of things.
Okay.
So it's a good thing that this show is not only live, but you can catch it on the replay. Write those down, because that was like a good 10 points of things that we can do to become better. So to wrap up, I see, how do we find you? Where are you on the internet? How do we connect with you?
So on Facebook, you go to Conversations with White People, and that'll link you to the rest of the groups. And then on the internet, go to conversations.net. And you'll see our blog of writers, about 60, 70 writers from a whole bunch of other communities. We're hoping that Erica will join us, because she's a profound thought leader in this community. Thank her for allowing me to be on the show and leading us into health.
Thank you. Well, this was the first installment of a month of what is on the minds of men. I'm here as a facilitator. I'm here to ask questions as a woman and go, what do you mean? What do you think? How does this work? What do we do? And I really hope that this has helped someone out there, that has provoked some thought. Look into yourself. And I think, as Icy said, honestly, be gentle with yourself. Man, woman, or child, be nice to yourself. Be kind to yourself. As I tell my son, who's here in studio all the time, you are your own best friend. And the same way you would talk to your friend, you would be kind to them, you would encourage them. That's what we need to do with ourselves. So read and all the things that he said, and we will be back next week with more of the Voices of Men. I thank you. I'll see you next Tuesday.